Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transformational Tuesday. My name is Deborah, and you are in for a treat today. We are going to talk about my new favorite topic and obsession, which is live streaming. And you are going to learn how to build your brand and your business through live streaming, the hottest thing in all of technology. I have a very, very special guest today that I cannot wait to introduce you to. I've just been fascinated ever since I met her about what she's doing and how she can help you with your business. You want to say hi, Alessandra?
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be joining in today.
Doesn't she sound amazing? She's a professional podcaster, so her microphone is on sleek, let me tell you. I had microphone envy. I had to upgrade my microphone just to talk to her. I couldn't use the internal mic. Let me formally introduce Alessandra Colaci. Said it right? Got the Italian flavor? Good. She has been involved in social media and technology for over 10 years. She has worked with Fortune 500 brands and small businesses to help them to increase and reach engagement online. She is the founder of Influence Buzz, which you're going to love. It's a podcast and website that teaches you how to grow your brand and following with live streaming. And that is www.influencebuzz.com. So you're definitely going to want to put that on your bookmark, save it, and watch it and listen while you work, and you're going to be able to get ahead of the curve. So welcome to Transformational Tuesday, Alessandra.
Thank you so much. This is going to be fun. I love it.
You know it's fun. Last time I saw you, we were on a yacht cruise in New York at the Periscope Summit.
We totally were. And I think, it's so exciting because we're involved in that early stage for live streaming. And when you look back at all these technologies and the very early days, it's like, how cool would it have been to be in the early stages of Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff? So it was amazing being on a yacht with you at Periscope Summit and really being able to be a part of this initial phase for all this stuff.
And here we are with the Statue of Liberty and Alex Petit, Amanda Oleander, and just like learning from each other. It was just so amazing. So can you just give people a little bit of a background about you and how you got into the world? Because I know when we were going to school, there wasn't all of this. These platforms didn't even exist. How did you get to be a live streaming expert?
Yeah. So what's funny is I've always been really early to a lot of technology. So I just love technology. I love to learn what's coming out, what's new, what I haven't discovered yet. And so when Twitter first came out way back in the day, the internet was so young back then, right? And so Twitter was a completely different thing at that point. I saw them at a conference. And I got involved pretty early on Twitter, got really early on there, grew a following on Twitter. But it changed a lot. It wasn't always what Twitter is that we know and love today. And when I saw live streaming, I'd already been working with a lot of brands over the years, brands and companies on social media activations and campaigns and contests and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be huge. Like, I really just was like, there's so much potential for this. And what's interesting, like I say on my podcast, it's not like this is something new that's never been around before. We've had live streaming before. It's something that's not a brand new kind of thing. But the ways that these different technologies like Periscope and Blab are using live streaming are very unique. And it's becoming more mainstream, I think, because of those things.
So for people that have been living on another planet and they have no idea what we're talking about when we say Periscope and Blab, can you just let people know what is Periscope, what is Blab, and how we can use it for business?
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of the early stage of what came out was called Meerkat, and Meerkat was one of the first live streaming apps for your phone. So Meerkat was only about a month or two before Periscope came out, and Periscope was soon thereafter, grew very, very fast. And it's an app that you download on your phone. Really simple. You just go to whatever app store. If you're on Android or iPhone, you go to the app store, download Periscope, and then you can literally push a button and live stream if you're at the park, if you're, hanging out with people, if you're teaching, any of those kind of things. You just push a button to go live. And then Blab was a few months after that. Blab came out, which is it's similar to Google Hangouts in a way, but it's something where it's more collaborative. Periscope and Meerkat are one person talking to multiple people that are viewing. And Blab is 4 people on screen. So it's a little bit different, but they're all amazing apps.
And that, when I watched my first Blab, I was like, that's so awesome, because the power of synergy, because one of the greatest things that I love about the internet is, the information and the knowledge. What we used to have to go to a card catalog and look for a book to find an hour later, people can get information in an instant. And having the energy of all these experts together on Blab just seems like so amazing. And how are you using Blab in podcasting?
So what I've started to do actually is record my episodes via Blab. It's kind of early stage, so I think Blab is getting to the point where they're adding in tools for people to be able to do really good audio on podcast or any kind of audio that they're recording via Blab, so people can reuse that content for their blog or for their podcast or anything like that. So they just recently actually acquired PodClear. PodClear is a tool that was built for podcasters or people who record audio to record each guest on a separate track so that you can really improve your audio and have professional audio coming right outside of that Blab. So what I've started to do is do my interviews via Blab. The benefit to that is that, you really expand your audience for people who maybe aren't even podcast listeners, for example, or aren't someone who's familiar with your brand. They see people that you're talking to and creating that, like you said, creating that synergy with, and they may discover you or discover someone new that they haven't talked, haven't listened to before. And so it's kind of a precursor to releasing the episode where people can already listen, and then they may be interested in hearing the replay when it's released as a podcast later on. So that's how I'm using it for that. But it's really valuable in even content for video, because what happens after, if you go on record when you do a Blab, what will happen is they'll send you a file afterwards to your email with the video file and the audio file. So if you want to reuse, so if you want to use that video or the audio, now they just release something where you can, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can post it directly to YouTube. A lot of things that you can do really seamlessly from Blab after you, without having to do a whole bunch of steps afterwards. They just do it for you. So I love it as a platform to create that content, have it live, have an interaction and engagement, and then, use that content elsewhere for other pieces that you want to use afterwards.
And the way I understand, just from the couple Blabs I've been on, you can invite your listeners to join in and ask a question. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think, with any kind of live streaming platform, initially it's important to really grow your audience and get people engaged. I think a lot of times people have these unrealistic expectations where they're going to go live and all of a sudden 10,000 people are going to be asking the questions. So it's important to build that audience ahead of time. Start to build it up before you do maybe some higher profile interviews and things like that. And that's a good way of just kind of doing that one-on-one, having people hop on the camera that you might know in person or you might know from other places online, but you just kind of build to that, and then you build an audience that's Blab specific, but then you also bring your audience from elsewhere, whether it's your email list or your other media that you have out there. You can always bring them back to things that are live and say, hey, I'm going live on this day at this time. And then they kind of convert to your Blab list and people who are watching you a variety of different places.
Okay, so now I'm going into professor teacher mode. So students, here are the points. Number one, you build your community first, right? Through your social media. You connect with your tribe. You give your expert value and opinion. Then two, you set a specific time that you're going to go on Blab or you're going to go on Periscope, so you can announce it to your email list, so you can announce it to your social media platforms, so you're not talking to yourself. Because just because you press record or you press on, it doesn't mean that people are going to miraculously just show up. You need to let people know and invite them. It's like ABC doesn't say, we're going to air Scandal when we feel like it. We don't know when, but it'll be on sometime, right? And then expect to be a best watch series. Same thing with our live streaming. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times people have this opinion that, oh, hey, this is the new hot thing. Like, it's going to be bigger than anything else I've ever done. And they don't realize, no matter what content you're producing, you always have to get out ahead of it and promote it and get people aware of it. And you may think, well, everyone knows about this. I've been talking about this forever. But continue to talk about those things, continue to reiterate the fact that you have things upcoming. If you have weekly shows, if you have daily shows, then people, can know at least that there's consistent things that they can look forward to. Like with you, you have a very like specific format that you do usually on here. And the more people that are aware of it, they can say, oh, you know what, I'm going to look forward to that and I'm going to tune in and I'm available. Because it is, like you said, it's very much like watching TV. But the benefit is that it's engagement with the audience, which is so unique, because instead of just like, hey, I'm watching the show and I can't interact, or I'm watching the speaker and I can't interact, this is something where it's a very much a two-way communication, and people can ask you questions, they can give you encouragement, they can, just feel like they're a part of your community. And building that community from day one is so, so important.
It is. And the power of this is when I heard that Apple TV now had Periscope, and Apple TV already had YouTube. So instead of going 247, people can go Netflix, YouTube, you in the tube, or you on the Periscope, and you have the power to get your brand message out. So can you talk a little bit about how you coach brands to be able to monetize their streaming?
Yeah, so I've talked with some people who get sponsorships, and that's something that I think as you get a larger audience, you can get sponsorships in the same way you would for anything else. So if you have, a YouTube show, if you have something that you're really well known on Twitter, it's that brand placements that you can monetize that way if you're an individual or someone who wants to do that. And then for brands, I think, it's really, if you have a product or a service, then it's another way for people to see that more human side to you. And I think that's important. People need to see the more human side and see that, even brands as well known as Coca-Cola or something like that, they have kind of a unique kind of thing that they're doing. And it's not the well manicured kind of commercials necessarily, but it's like, hey, this is fun, this is interesting, I love this brand, I want to interact with them, I want to hear about sales or contest or like any kind of thing that would be really great and interactive. So there's a wide variety of things, and I think there's a lot of content being developed that's really unique. But find what works for you in terms of what your audience usually resonates well with elsewhere, and then do that via live streaming and add a little extra flavor to it. Find something that is unique to you, and something that you get feedback real time. So if someone's giving you feedback like, oh my gosh, I love that you're doing that, or if I love that you're doing contests, or I love that you're doing sales, whatever that might be, then you can get that feedback real time and say, okay, let me take note that this is working well, which is super cool for live streaming.
And that's what, as a business owner, what I love about it, because it's like having a focus group every single day, because you will attract the people. People at the Periscope Summit were talking a lot about trolls. And you know what I noticed? Trolls don't like me because I'm talking about empowering, uplifting information and consciousness. As soon as I talk about anything uplifting, they go away. So I'm like, great. So I don't have to worry about trolls, thank God. But the people that come onto my, my Periscope, for example, they are giving me ideas for programs and for products and for services. I told you I got my first coaching client via Periscope. So there's so many different ways to monetize through live streaming. What do you coach people on when you say, okay, if someone says, I want to monetize my channel? So sponsorship is one, having that personal touch is another. How else do you coach people on monetization?
So I think what you mentioned was, a really good area to explore. If you're building anything, if you're building a course, or if you're building some kind of coaching program or anything like that, get awareness of your brand out there and have a very clear call to action. So if you're like, I'm a coach and this is what I do and this is what I focus on, make sure that you open with that, you remind them in the middle, and you remind them at the end. So
3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. If it's a longer scope, as we call them, so scopes are, basically when you go live on Periscope, a lot of people use the slang scope. So I may say that at the later part of this interview. But if you're live and you might have a longer scope that's, half an hour or longer, there's going to be a bunch of people that are coming in and out. There are people who are who come in and drop off, and new people the whole time. So you don't treat it like something where you're watching a TV show and someone's there for half an hour and they're seeing the entire TV show except for maybe skipping the commercials. For these things, it's very much kind of an instant gratification kind of thing. So people may be coming in and out. They may be coming back in later on. They may be dropping out completely and going to watch something else. So don't be intimidated that, well, I've already said my name a few times, or I already said what I do a few times. And a lot of people call that the reset button. So do the reset button. Be like, hey, this is for people who maybe are coming in midway and don't know what I'm all about, don't know what, it is I'm selling or what I'm building or any of that kind of stuff. And getting that feedback, if you're building a course, for example, before, a lot of it's like, hey, you have to build an email list and then, pull that email list and then do surveys and all that kind of stuff. With this, use that as a way to pull them right away, build that course more quickly, get feedback and find out what's going to resonate well with your audience, and then promote it via those same live streaming channels. So there's a lot of ways that people can make money depending on what their service or product is.
I love it because it's so fast. You don't have to like wait and surveys and right away. You could know what to do. And do you see Alessandra behind Alessandra? She's got a little chalkboard that has her website. Do you see that? That is very, very smart. And that's something that everybody that's live streaming should do, because people were asking me, where's your website? Where can I buy your book? And I was like telling them, and somebody wrote it in, but you need to have some sort of branding. I see people like Kim Garst with full like billboards behind them. So
yeah.
People know it's about connecting your message back to building your brand. Otherwise, you're just going to be giving away a lot of free information and feeling like, where's the money, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to connect the dots.
And that's what's funny, because I think we're, on things like Google Hangouts or other places that we can put a graphic or you can put a banner or something like that. But with live streaming, you have to be kind of creative. So I'm obsessed with chalkboards. I have like 10 different chalkboards that I use. I actually bought, so what I did is chalkboards are kind of hard to like erase. So I bought just regular frames that are plastic. And I put like some black construction paper behind them, and then I can write with chalk markers on them. And then it's really easy to, like, if I have anything to promote, if I have a URL for a podcast episode, anything like that, then I create a bit.ly link so that it's, an easy thing to use. Or if you have a shortener for your domain, you can say your domain and then just make it short, because, they can't really see much on that little screen. And then, kind of use it as if it was an overlay. So keep it near you, have those things that you promote, and you can use like whiteboards, chalkboards, any of those kind of things, or printouts. I've seen people use printouts of things before too. And those are really good ways of just like kind of bridging the gap between the display of graphics and the live streaming that you're doing right then.
Yeah, I like to Periscope outside because it has great lighting outside, but you can't have a board. I guess you could have a board. It's being really creative. So are people still on Meerkat since Twitter bought Periscope for $100 million?
People are still on Meerkat, but I feel like the mechanics of Meerkat are very different. So I just, like, for me personally, I got on Meerkat and it wasn't something that I was getting as much engagement from day one. But for people who have kind of built a brand on there, or if someone's focusing on saying, hey, Meerkat is maybe not as large as Periscope, but the benefit of that is that I can build a brand on there and focus on that and maybe be different because I'm building a brand on Meerkat as a live streaming channel. I think just if people make that conscious decision that I'm going to be a Meerkatter or a Periscope or a Blabber or like a combination of a couple of those, then that's okay. You can still build your brand and you can still build an audience, but they're very different from each other. Meerkat's very much more like a kind of, it has a lot of features that are really cool. So after you go live, you have something at the end where you actually can put a URL for them to click through. And I have heard that the click-through rate is phenomenal for that because people are like engaged, they're actually listening and all that kind of stuff. So some of the features that Meerkat has that some of these other things don't have yet are ones that people can take advantage of and maybe be like less of a number kind of thing. And then, or if you want to just focus on the engagement, all that kind of stuff, you can go to Periscope, but no matter what, it's a build. It's always a build, I think, for people to get on there, and they have to build that audience and that community, be consistent with your content, and you're going to build that community around that. So whatever platform you're using, it's going to have to be that at the initial stages.
So key, everyone, underline this, highlight this in your mind. It's consistency. One of the things I was telling my business coaching clients yesterday was you can't go to the gym one time and get a six-pack. You can't do one live stream and expect to have sales, right? So it's about setting up that schedule. And really what I heard at Periscope Summit over and over is having a strategy. Do not live stream if you don't have a strategy for what you're funneling people into. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so I've seen some people who are more the live streamers, and that's okay. But I think if you're selling something, be really clear about like what your identity is within that. And so it's okay to do some off the cuff, like fun behind the scenes things, because that's important. People need to see that there's a personal side of you, and people feel really like kind of empowered by the fact that, hey, so-and-so is real and they are someone who has like a life and they have kids and they have a family. And it's like, I thought there was some, person who was just perfect and woke up like absolutely perfect, So I think that's important, and brands need to remember that. Companies need to remember that. Individuals need to remember that it's okay to show that side, and it actually even strengthens your personal brand, because people say, look, I can relate to this person. I can feel like I can do what they are doing now, and I can get to that point one day, and it kind of empowers them to feel like they can grow to that point of success, kind of thing. But I think, at the same time, don't go live every time with no idea what you're doing, like that's not a good idea either. So have a mixture. I think like it's kind of the 80-20 rule, like everything in life usually is.
Exactly.
And so, 20% of the time, maybe you can do things that are off the cuff or fun or whatever. And then, inject that fun into your more planned things, but have maybe an outline or something that you're going off of, so that people are like, oh, I'm getting so much value. And I feel like this is like a webinar, this is something that I'm learning a lot, or I'm finding out a lot about the brand, or whatever that might be.
Yeah, you said exactly what I said. 80-20 rule yesterday. I said 80% content, and then 20% you could just kind of show like what you're doing. So Monday through Friday, I'm doing an 11-11, align with the divine, life coaching, business coaching type scope. And then on the weekends, I take people to concerts and parties.
That's fun, because I think that really is kind of, people have the work week and all that stuff. So it kind of aligns with that kind of stuff too, where they're like, okay, now I'm in the mode of doing fun stuff on the weekends. And then they can go along with you as you do that fun stuff too.
And it's in the middle of the day. So I said, instead of taking a smoke break, take a scope break.
I love that. I love that.
It just came to me yesterday. And we, in California growing up, you would have these earthquake drills. And so you would stop, drop, and roll. So I'm telling people, stop, drop, and scope every day, 11-11. Yeah. So.
That's a really great idea, because then I think that's such a smart thing to do. Like, well, you're planting that seed in people's minds. That's like, hey, this is when I have this content. It's kind of like a quick little TV show, and that's what's so amazing about live streaming. Like in our household, we literally do not watch TV anymore. And because we're just like, we've met so many amazing people. It's like a combination of a social hour when you want it on demand, and learning when you want it on demand, and but with that engagement and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, or entertainment. There are people that I watch on there that are hilarious and they just make me laugh, or I just like really enjoy seeing them. And so imagine all those things in one. Like it's so unique to live streaming. And like you said, people can then kind of think through like, oh wait, at 11:11, I'm gonna go watch Deborah. I'm gonna like check out her stuff because I know I can take a break at that time, right?
Yeah, it's just, I'm like, oh, I was actually listening to my Periscope while I was driving. I plugged it into I'm like, oh, it's making driving, I hate to drive, but it made driving so much fun, because I'm listening to Alex Kahn. Like he was doing this amazing thing where he was Skyping in people. Do you know about that?
Yes. So unfortunately, it's not something that's a feature that's built into Periscope just yet. But I think a lot of times you want to do an interview with someone else. You can do that on Meerkat. There's something called Cameo, where someone else can pop into your stream as a guest. And so Meerkat has that ability. Blab, of course, is 4 people. So you're able to do that on Blab. But with Periscope, you kind of have to hack it a little. So you can go in and you can do things like, a lot of people, what I will do is I may even do a Blab on screen on my computer, and then I'll have my little mount for my phone. So it's just a little desk tripod for my phone in the middle of me and my computer facing the screen, so facing the back camera to the screen, so that's in the screen for the Blab. And so it's kind of multi-use. People who are not necessarily on Blab yet can see it on Periscope and still interact, and I can get questions there. But then also I can be seeing the Blab screen and answering any questions that come up on that. So it's great, because I think multi-channel live streaming is going to be something I think that more and more people are going to do, more and more brands are going to do, where, you'll be streaming on Meerkat and Blab and Periscope all at the same time, for example. And so that's one way of doing it. Or another way of doing it is if you do a Skype call or something like that, and you basically split your screen, and then you have, half and a half, and you can put like a little graphic or something below it. I believe that's how a couple of people like Alex Kahn and Alex Pettit do, where they have a Skype call and they kind of set it up so that you see a split screen. So there are a few ways of kind of hacking it right now.
So on your computer, you're doing a Skype call where it's split screen, and then you're scoping your screen?
Yeah. So,
Ah,
so you
okay.
have a camera, but it's set up where it just shows kind of a really, really small part of your screen, because then it looks like it's all they're seeing. They can't, I mean, a lot of people can't even tell that they're seeing a screen. It's like a little bit of a fuzziness, but you can do things on screen. I mean, think through all the possibilities of that in general, not just if you're doing an interview, but if you want to share, like have a graphic that looks like it's taking a lot of the screen, or play a video or any kind of content that you want to have on your computer and have that back camera pointing to that and taking up most of the screen, then people feel like it's a really kind of like multimedia experience, and it's a really good way of like kind of hacking it a little bit.
Oh my God. And this is why we need influence buzz in our life, because there's all of these hacks that you don't need to think about or recreate the wheel. There are social media marketing experts. And I love what David said when I was listening to your podcast yesterday, because he said, you know what? There's no such thing as a social media guru. We're all just learning, and we're just a little bit ahead of you, and we're teaching you, right?
Yeah. And that's so true, because I got on really early, and I consider myself someone who knows a lot about live streaming, but it's still so young. It's something where it's been around for, 6-7 months for most of these apps. And that's early when you look at YouTube, and even people who got in 2-3 years into it. And, that still was early, considering that some of these things are 10 years old, and now they've reached kind of their peak in terms of mainstream adoption. So we're all very early. We're all learning. There are times that I'll watch things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Like last night, Periscope Crawl is a really good thing that I was a part of last night, and they do tips. We'll do kind of the perspective of business tips, and they'll do like life hacks and then tech tips. And I learned a bunch of stuff about like tech tips on Periscope that I was like, I had no idea about these things, So we're all learning from each other. We're all sharing. And even in terms of style, there have been people that I've watched on Periscope that I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing there. I'm like, oh, okay, like that is smart. And then I'll integrate some of that stuff into my scopes, or some of my blabs or any of that kind of stuff. And you really pick up on things that are like, hey, I love what they're doing with that. Let me learn from that person. Really, like a lot of that goes on with this, and it's a very welcoming community that teaches a lot to a lot of people.
And that's what I love. People, I mean, when we give hearts, we don't just give hearts, the Periscope hug, remember? It's like literally everyone is so open, because the Periscope community and live streaming community, I will guess, we believe in abundance, and we know that there's nobody like us, and that what we're doing is unique and niche, and that the more we share and the more we give, the more people will get to benefit, and everybody wins when there's more people on Periscope. I heard that there was 1 million people in 7 days, like it broke a record.
There was 1 million people in 7 days, and it's crazy because on Periscope, because Alex Pettit was sharing some stats on some other social networks, and some of them took a year or longer to get to that same number. And so, we look at things like Facebook and Twitter, and we're like, oh, they're so big, but with Periscope getting there so much faster than even these really mature networks, I think it shows the power of that growth. And we're like literally tip of the iceberg with like 15 million users, I think it is now, is tip of the iceberg. Because if I talk to family and friends, I mean, of course, I am like a live streaming evangelist. I talk about it all the time. I love it. I'm super passionate about it. I want brands to use it more. But when we look at people's awareness, if you ask people, hey, have you been on Periscope? Have you been on Blab? Have you been on Meerkat? They're like, what is this? So I think we're getting to the point where maybe a few people will know when you ask them, but it's still so much potential to grow into. So like, we are the early adopters. Let's be the ones who really shape what this becomes, and start to create this community that people who are new feel welcome. They discover things quickly, learn things quickly, find like welcoming communities and all that kind of stuff. And so I think we're building that all together.
Exactly. And where can they follow the Periscope Crawl? Is that just on Periscope?
Yeah, so they do that every Thursday at 7:31. I love the time frame because it's 7:31.
I'm taking a note.
Yes.
7:31. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's JB Howard, BetJet, and Kevin Buchanan, and there are some really great people on there who I think they're a great example of creating shows on Periscope. And there are a few different things. Parachute TV is another one that's a channel that's kind of been born out of this. So Parachute TV is something where different people are kind of guest hosts, and they take over the channel for a certain amount of time, and it's just constant content all the time from a bunch of different creators. And these like little mini TV channels are starting to be born with some of this stuff. So some really cool ones are like, all the time. There are some that are weekly, but Periscope Crawl, I think, is one that I've learned a lot from. And it was really fun being on that. But, and there's Editor TV, which is another one that's creating some really fun content around different guest hosts and all that. And so I'm super excited to see people create these little mini networks within Periscope or within Blab and start to cultivate that content and create like really good mashups of all these different things, of different hosts and different topics and all that kind of stuff, which is also an area that I think a lot more people should explore.
So Periscope Crawl is we should follow JB Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and don't you worry, any of you listening, watching, I'm going to put all of the links in the description at the YouTube channel. So you'll have that all right there. And most importantly, I want you guys to be able to stay connected with Alessandra. She's got so much to give, so much to share. Influencebuzz.com. Let's see it on the chalkboard.
Right there. Yeah, and like I was saying, for some of this stuff, when you're live streaming, just even to have little mini chalkboards. I know Kim Gars, for example, she has a whiteboard that she uses, and she'll do just a little outline of what her main points are, and then she shows that on screen. So there's a lot of ways that you can integrate that additional content and different images and stuff like that. But this one's a little more permanent, and you can have ones that are more portable with you as you're outside and stuff like that.
I'm probably going to go to the 99-cent store right when we hang up and get me a few chalkboards so I can Periscope on the go. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's great for URLs.
Yes. There's so much to talk about. And I definitely want to have you back on the show, because as people start releasing their fear, I think one of the things that people have is fear of pressing that record button. I had no fear. I was just like, whatever. Hi, everybody. I wasn't doing it correctly. I was just showing people concerts and wondering why nobody was talking to me, because I wasn't talking to them, not realizing that Periscope and Meerkat are definitely like a two-way conversation.
Yes.
And Blab for sure. So it's really learning, I think, in the beginning from watching. That's how I learned how to salsa dance. And then just jumping on the dance floor, because the whole thing about these live streaming is it's okay to be imperfect, because we're real, we're authentic. It's all about brands and businesses showing who they are, what their values are, and just being natural and sharing what and I love when Brian said, if you suck in real life, you'll suck on Periscope.
Yeah, Brian Fanzo is another one to definitely follow. He's amazing because, what's interesting is Brian Fanzo, so he's at iSocialFans. A lot of people know him as his username because he's been known for that for a long time, but he was super early to this whole kind of revolution. And when Meerkat first came out at South by Southwest, Brian Fanzo was one of the first people to use it and one of the first people to really, kind of evangelize live streaming. And it was so powerful because he had such a great audience and community already around it. And they were like, oh, what is this live streaming thing? Let's check this out, So I think those initial early influencers are very important to all these channels. And take note as you try Blab, as you try, Periscope, who are those influencers that you should be following? Who are the people that you just keep on hearing about, and interact with them, engage with them, get that conversation going so that you can really build that community together.
Exactly. And I have some influencers that I love that I can recommend, but we definitely appreciate you coming on Transformational Tuesday. I know all of my small businesses are like, ooh, I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear. So we are going to share even more knowledge and get even more knowledge by going to Influence Buzz. And then your podcast, is that something that people can get an app on their phone and listen to?
Yeah, so it's available on iTunes or the podcast app on iPhone, and then any kind of podcatcher app that you have, you can usually download, or Stitcher is a really good option. I love to use Stitcher. It's one of the ways that I listen to podcasts. So Stitcher is an app that is on Android and on iPhone, and you can listen on there as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. One more cool tip, Stitcher. And one thing you mentioned earlier was PodClear. Is that an application or is that a website?
So PodClear is going to actually be integrated directly into Blab. And what's really exciting about that is right now, the audio is pretty good on Blab, but if you want to reuse that audio afterwards for a podcast or something like that, I'd recommend just making sure that your guests are prepped, that they have a decent mic, that there's not a lot of feedback. So kind of check some of that stuff beforehand. There aren't private Blabs yet. You can do a private scope to people if you want to do one-on-one coaching or whatever, some things that you want to do, kind of like a mini webinar or something. You can actually do private Periscopes, but you cannot do that on Blab. I don't think it's something they're going to add in ever. So you probably want to use Google Hangouts or something just to do an initial mic check and all that kind of stuff first, and then hop on to the scheduled show that you have on there. But PodClear is going to actually be directly integrated into Blab, and Blab is adding a lot of co-hosting features so that you can make a second person to co-host, and they actually have admin rights. They can block people and boot people if they're misbehaving, and they can add people to the seats. So that's really cool because it's not like only your responsibility. You can have people that you trust being in those second or third seats as co-host.
And for those of you that are overwhelmed, I can tune into my audience so I know what questions they have. That's the great part about being a professor for 15 years. So some of the people are thinking, oh my God, I don't have time to even post on Facebook, much less Instagram. And now you're telling me about 3 other live streams. We're just giving you options. We're just giving you possibilities. You do not necessarily have to get on all 3. We're just sharing with you that there are opportunities, and you may find a platform that works better for your brand. But at least we're giving you the information, the smorgasbord. You know what's out there, and then you can make an informed decision to say, you know what, I'm going to put my energy and effort into Periscope, or I'm doing podcasting, so I think Blab would be a better platform. So don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to do it all, but make sure whatever you do, like Alessandra said, be consistent.
And I think, you brought up a really good point too. Even if at the beginning you're just watching things and you're saying like, what are people doing on this platform? Like, let me just get familiar with it as an app or as something on my desktop. Just you can watch too. You can watch too, become one of the most important things I think is to get interactive with the community and to become a part of that community as a viewer. So like, I'm not just, going live all the time. A lot of times I'm in other people's broadcasts, commenting, talking to other people and all that kind of stuff. And that builds community, and that actually builds a following too. Like a lot of times you get people who are following you because they like hearing from you as a viewer, and you're not even broadcasting right then. So that's something that you don't feel like only what you have to do is broadcast to build that community. You can go learn stuff or be a part of other things and still actually grow your own following at the same time, which is a really, really great give and take.
Well, I just subscribed to you. I'm definitely going to be following and participating, be a very active member of your tribe. And I invite you, if you're ever available at 11:11 Pacific time, to jump on. They named themselves. You want to hear the name of my tribe?
Yes.
They call themselves the Synergy Igniters.
That is amazing. I love it.
And the name of my company is Synergy Unlimited. And I was calling them Synergizer Bunnies. They're like, no, we don't want to be bunnies. So that just shows you the power of knowing not what you think your audience wants, but what they want, and really listening to them. That's the power of live streaming. It's they have the opportunity not just to talk blab, 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 but to really listen, hear, and then take informed action of what our customers want and need. And we as business and brands can even develop products based on what they're saying their needs are and solve their pain points through really listening to them.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that, instead of these big drawn out focus groups that a lot of people have to do, it's something where it's an instant feedback. And one of my favorite quotes ever is like, get outside the building. It's something that, well, a lot of times, especially in the corporate world, but in general, we think, oh, we know all the things that we know what our audience wants. We know exactly what they want and don't want. And then might even build a product around it and launch it, and then it's crickets because everyone's like, we don't want that. Why did you build that? So I think you really have to like find out what people want before you build it. Find out what kind of things you can change about it before you launch it to the world. And this is a great way of doing that.
I learned the hard way with that, and $10,000 of building something that I thought, this is exactly what they want. This is who wants it. And it was completely different. And so this is that's just one of the reasons to live stream. You could really save yourself a lot of time, a lot of energy and money. Instead of assuming you know what your audience wants, you can ask them right then and there and get it. I saw Danielle Ford yesterday. She's creating a new program. She was asking them, should I title it this or should I do this? Should I do it this way or that way? And literally there was like 100 people giving her amazing feedback. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's really, really a great community. And I think that's what's been so welcoming. You know, it's like, I mean, I think people need to be aware that they're not going to be people who all love your content, but it's actually pretty tame. Like, I think they're a very welcoming kind of bunch. And so it's great to be, whatever you do, even if you do it here and there, like, I think just start to get involved in the community and start to get aware of it, even if it's something you're planning to kind of jump into as you know, add something else to your mix.
I really have to end the interview, but I don't want to. One more question, please. Can I ask you one more question? So I had this question on my scope today, and I just want to hear it from your mouth. Somebody said, what do you do when you have negative people? And it wasn't just negative people on their scopes, just negative people just around them. But how do you handle when you have negative people? Because it was hurting my heart when I was watching the replays of the Periscope Summit and there were trolls. I'm like, do they realize people would pay good money to watch a live stream? And many conferences charge to watch the replays. And the Periscope Summit that was put on so amazingly by Kathy Hackle and Ryan, they did this out of the generosity of their heart. And to have people writing comments, and then when I'm watching it on Catch, to see those comments, it just was like, oh, how can we get rid of this?
I think, you know, the community is starting to, a lot of times people block, or, you know, they kind of, it fixes itself somewhat in terms of, like, if you're growing an audience, the community is going to start to block them, and you'll start to block them and all that kind of stuff. So if there are people who are saying, like, really, really bad things or negative things or anything like that, I think feel free. Like, there are some people who are less strict with their blocking procedures, quote unquote, and some people who are like, oh, anything, I'm blocking anything, because they know that it's going to lead to a better experience for everyone. But I think that they overall, you know, Dave Shrine, actually, who was one of the podcasts that you listened to for Influence Buzz, he was talking about on a scope about how, like, you know, you've made it when you have haters, you know, like, if you have haters, like, that's actually kind of a good thing. You know, it shows that there's visibility enough for there to be someone in the bunch that doesn't like you, and they probably have no reason. They're probably just jealous of your success or visibility or whatever. And so it literally has no merit. Like, one of my second broadcasts, I had someone say, like, some really mean things about me. And I was not even, like, I didn't even have an audience or community or anything. It was just like a handful of people in there. And it was super negative, but I was like, why am I even, like, internalizing this? You know, I was like, it could have been anyone that they hopped onto, and they probably were going to say something mean or say that same mean thing to someone else that, you know, it doesn't even have anything to do with me. So those people are the negative people who are going in there. I think just don't take it to heart, which is hard to do, but realize that those people are probably going to other places and just finding ways that they can say things to everyone. So, and be quick on the block. But I think, some people, when they block people, they actually make a point of being like, oh, you just got blocked. And other people, it's more their style to just block people, and you don't even notice that they're doing it. And all of a sudden it says broadcaster block so-and-so. So you can block people by tapping on their name and then clicking block user. So that's on Periscope. You can tap on their name and block them. And that's a really good way to just kind of continue to moderate and prune that community. So it's like, so that person can't come back and say those things again.
Yes, exactly. I have a very strict policy. If someone says even the littlest thing that's a little bit off, I don't say anything at all. I don't give them any energy to it. So I will immediately block it, because in our synergy igniters, we're on the No Stress Express. And if someone isn't bringing light, we don't. But what you said was a good point. It's like, if somebody said, Deborah, you're a doctor, I would be like, no, I'm not. So if somebody said something very negative, I have to be so into my self-esteem and self-confidence that I know the truth of who I am. Alex Kahn did a funny joke on one of his scopes, because, you know, he's gorgeous like a god. And somebody said you're ugly or something like that. He's like, oh my God, that just hurt my self-esteem. I'm so devastated. He made a funny joke about it. I'm like, that's how we have to take it. We just let it roll off of us, and we just serve the 99% of people that love us, and let the 1% just keep leading.
Yeah, like, I really just, like, your community is going to support you. Really dive into that, feed off of that energy, and be encouraged to the fact that you have all these people who love you. Like, if you have, like, 100 people who love you and 20 people who don't, it's still a lot of people who really love you, and the 20 who don't probably don't like anyone. You know, so that's okay. Like, that's okay. It's not anything personal to you, I think. So just, like, continue to moderate and encourage your users to moderate too, because if they block those people, then those people are probably not going to be in some other scope, like in their scope, you know, or some other one that you're in. So it helps everyone.
Exactly. And who they don't really like is themselves. So we just need to block them and bless them. That's what I say. Block them and bless them, that may they learn to love themselves, so they can be contributing force in this community. So
Yep.
I want to thank you so much, and I want to invite people to connect with you on your podcast. You can download Stitcher on your phone. Go to influencebuzz.com. You can go right now and listen to amazing podcasts. I learned so much. It's like taking a business course, like for free. It's just so awesome. And then is there any other social media besides Periscope and Meerkat and Blab where people can follow you on?
Yeah, so all of those, including Twitter, I'm at Alessandro, and so because my name is very long, so I shorten it for you guys. So at Alessandro on Periscope, on Blab, and also on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I think it's a great way of just engaging with people after live streaming. You can talk to them and thank them for viewing your broadcast or anything like that, or answer questions that you may not have gotten to. So Twitter's a really good, like, kind of quick way of doing that, and not having to, be necessarily even connected to them. You can just answer them really quickly.
And it's Alessandra.
And CO yep. Yeah, CO for my last name.
Exactly. And I'm going to put all of that in the details in the description.
Perfect.
So thank you so much. Really appreciate you for being on Transformational Tuesday. And I really appreciate all of you, not just for tuning in, but for giving your comments of what you want to hear more of. If you want to have her back, what do you want me to ask her? What do you want me to talk about? Definitely share this broadcast with your communities on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever your communities are. And then, of course, remember to subscribe on YouTube, because the more subscribers I have to the channel, the more I'm able to go to YouTube and take classes to be able to make the videos even better for you. So I really appreciate that. My name is Deborah. I am a motivational speaker, author, and consultant. And it's my belief, absolutely, that with the power of synergy, anything is possible. So I want to thank you so much and wish you all the best. Ciao, ciao, my Italian sister.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Ciao.